I've got to say, I really love the indicator here as we get started that we can go for 8 hours.
Let's go for it.
I'm not sure I'm going to make it the whole 8 hours, but let's get started. Welcome, everybody. My name is James. This is Steve on the call. Say hi, Steve.
Hey, everyone. Hey, Steve.
Hi, Steve. So we are contributors to the allReady project for HTBox. And what we're doing today is a live coding session. We're going to kind of walk through start to finish of the entire process that's required. Now, I've already got a fork, so I've already cloned the repo down. I've forked it to my own GitHub account, and I have cloned it down to my machine. So if you're new to some Git terminology or GitHub process, that's kind of where we've started from. And now that I've got a copy of this code locally, and I'm using, I've got the GitHub client up here. They've got a GitHub desktop client, but I've also got PoshGit, which installs with the GitHub for desktop or GitHub desktop client as well. So I've got PoshGit going here. What we're going to do is we're going to have a look at one of the issues. Pardon me. We're going to have a look at one of the issues. We're going to take it slow, and if there's any questions along the way, then we'll try and answer those as well. But essentially, what we're going to do is pick one of these issues and kind of just walk through it. Do you know what, Steve, maybe let's assume the posture that we know what we're doing with the tools, but we're new-ish to the whole process. So I have to share a secret with you for a second here. So I'm going to stop sharing. And what I'm going to do is just start sharing maybe I should fill people in on how to do this too. So I'll go back. I'm going to turn sharing off. I started a collaboration setting. So we are using a pretty awesome new plugin, and I'll just show you how this works. Now I've signed in. Steve and I are both in the. We've got access to the collaboration to be able to host as collaborators. So all I have to do is click the share button. I'm signed in, and it gives me this link that I can now share out. And I'm going to hide my screen for a second here just because I'm not sure quite what all I've got going on in Slack right now. And there is so all I had to do is pull, it copied a link to the clipboard for me. So all I did was post it back out. And now if I head back in, I'll share the screen back out with you again. And
so at this end, I've got a link, and it's opening up Visual Studio Preview.
And what we should see here very soon is Steve joining my session here on the desktop.
Oh, and of course it wants credentials for an account. So let's log that in.
So we have a few viewers joining us here as well. So go ahead and ask any questions that you want. If you do, we are coding on .NET Core. So allReady is a project where we are, Richard Campbell coined the phrase coding for the greater good. So this is a part of the humanitarian toolbox, and oh my gosh, we are living in the future.
Look at that.
You are seeing Steve typing transatlantic desktop or Visual Studio editing here. Here we go. So the idea here is that this is a project that is free for charities and nonprofits. The goal of the software is really to reduce the burden that is placed on organizations when they organize events. Now, in some cases, these events are something more ambitious, like the installation of 10,000 smoke detectors, which is something that's actually a project that's happened through the American Red Cross. In other cases, it might be something more local and more present, such as the distribution of food hampers approaching the holidays. And if you think about that problem, it doesn't seem like too big of a deal, but you're going to have multiple phases for that type of event. You're going to have volunteers who need to kind of coordinate everything at the office. You're going to have volunteers that bring food in or that sign up as part of a team or a group in order to fill a hamper. You're going to have people who need to drop food off. So there'll be pickup locations. There's going to be sorting that has to happen to get all the hampers sorted out. And then there's going to be delivery. So there's actually all of these components as part of that process that are required, and allReady kind of lives and breathes in order to help remove the burden of organizing all of those volunteers and messaging out what is actually needing to happen from event to event and within that campaign. Okay, so what we're going to do is, now that we've got some multiple things going on here, I'm just going to close all the documents and we're going to hone in on something in particular. So we'll approach this. And I got Steve Test in chat. Hello, hello. I'll keep that open there so I can see it on the side. What we're going to do...
Say, James, that looks like that's just internal to us, that group chat, because it's not popping up on the live stream. So I'll open the live stream.
Okay. Maybe then what we can do is just, Steve, if you wouldn't mind watching Twitter while we're up and going here. And yeah, so just tweet... the hashtag allReady. So that'll look something like this. Just if you want to interact, just tweet out hashtag allReady, and we'll do our best. So I will just leave this up on the screen here. And if anybody wants to participate, then Steve's going to watch that hashtag, and we'll go from there. Okay, so let's take a look here. I have the repository pulled up here, and this is an issue that was brought up about 28 days ago. Now, if you find us on GitHub, we've got HTBox whack allReady. And what we're trying to do is organize everything so that we can get folks, make it easy for people to find these issues. So we've got a project here called the Virtual Codeathon. And if you drill into it, you'll be able to find, we've got a curated list of things that need to be done. And it ranges from, first pull request level kind of things all the way up to some pretty complicated aspects of what's required in the software. So feel free to jump in and tackle one of those. In this particular one, we're just going to jump in, and this is an issue that we kind of had a pre-look at, but we're going to try and approach it with fresh eyes here. So typically the thing that we would do is, and maybe Steve, if you wouldn't mind, I'll do something like this. Feel free to interact with us on the issues, but I'll say, something like this. I'll put my hand up on this one, and then I'll say, where is the best place to start looking? And then Steve over on his side, or somebody else from the project team, we're going to follow up with that, and we'll just kind of emulate that piece right now. And maybe Steve, if you could add a comment in there and kind of just point me in the right direction, and we'll kind of walk through this as though we would if we were out in the world at large.
Sure. Yeah. So I've just assigned you, since you've shown an interest in this issue.
Perfect. And as far as where I can start looking, there's actually a hint in here. So maybe I can try and follow the dots here. There's also a link in issue 2291. We're updating the publish icon on the campaign lister page. This button also appears in the campaign details page over here when that campaign is not marked as published. Once 2291 is complete, we should update this button on the campaign details page as well. So basically we're saying that in 2291, on the administrator campaigns lister page, we have a publish button, which is shown if the campaign is in draft. This uses a very unclear icon, so we should replace the icon with the text publish instead. Here's the current button. So there's the button with the publish thing, and then it's also over on the campaign page that we can see there. So if you are in an ASP.NET Core application and you're working on an MVC project, Steve, sure. Thanks for helping out. You should be able to find this in the admin area folder, views folder. Perfect. So I waited for that. I see the areas and there's admin, and I'm looking probably for the campaign controller. And actually in particular under views. So I will go back up here. We'll look under views, and then under campaign details. So what we've got here, because this is a view file, we're looking under areas admin and then views. The view that's in question from this path is by default, by convention, going to be in the campaign folder. And there's the details. I can also get a little bit more information out of that. I know that there's this, just again, by default convention, this looks like some kind of routing parameter. So if I visit over at the campaign controller, I can probably find a, here we go, there's an index, and then there's the details page. Again, we're returning the view, and by convention, it's going to use that same name. And here's the ID that it's looking for that's being passed in as 1. So little kind of a trick that I like to use. I'm just going to run this really quickly. Steve, anything that you wanted to add as far as trying to find these issues or finding code in our code base?
I think we've tried to follow as closely as we can the traditional MVC pattern, but we have got a lot of the functionality, which I think, James, you're going to sort of show in a moment, where we moved a lot of our code out into mediator handlers. So one of the things you will find is that quite often we are sending these kind of mediator requests, and they're going to sort of point to or send over a mediator query normally, or a command. And that's going to get wired up by mediator in the background. So sometimes you may have a little trouble navigating to those pieces. And a good tip there is, if you follow the wherever that query is held. So if you sort of use the little sort of double arrows icon in Solution Explorer once you're on a query, that will take you to where the file is, and then usually right underneath that you'll find the handler. We are starting to move towards the sort of convention of keeping those things in the same file, which isn't necessarily what some people like to see, 2 different classes in the same file. But in this case, they're so tightly bound together in terms of what they're doing, and the query is just a kind of property bag, really. That's going to make life easier to find these pieces.
Yeah, it's not uncommon in other languages, but in C#, in the C# world, you actually do kind of see this. So what Steve's referring to here, I'll just kind of elaborate that with the code pulled up, is that we've got this detailed method on the controller here, and there's a campaign detail query that we're using to fetch the information. So if I say go to definition here, it's popping up this guy right over here in the you can use this keep open button, but we get this preview tab that gets opened, and I'll just pop it open just so we can keep it open here. And if I click this sync with active document button, then I can actually find where it is, and then here's the query, and here's the query handler. And again, we are trying to move to a place where these are in the same file, just because it does help reduce some of the visual noise in the tree. I mean, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, I guess, right? When you start walking through it and figuring out where you're trying to remove clutter from. But okay, so we have this. We're looking for the button for I guess the publish button, and the cue from the original, or from this defect, is that if the campaign is not marked as published. So if I go into a debug mode here, and actually I wanted to show just a really trick that I like to use here. I'll just copy the path. If I'm working somewhere in particular, I'll copy the path, and I might go up into my I can right click on the properties, or sorry, just drill into the properties, and out here on debug, I can launch the browser to the relative URL admin campaign details. And now when I close that out, I can run the app, and just in running it, as soon as the app runs, I'm going to disable this Chrome script debugging, because that does take a little while to get it all up and running.
No, I nearly always find myself turning that off.
Yeah. I just installed the preview of Visual Studio again. I literally uninstalled it last week, and then to do the live share bits, I actually had to jump in here. So I want to point out something else really quickly here. We're forcing you to log in. This is provided for you. I'll head back into the Solution Explorer, and if we have a look at the config file. And this is actually documented in the repo, but it has the default username and password here. So I can type in the administrative username and password, or I can just copy it out of this app settings file.
And these users will all get, if the first time you run this application up, we do a seed step. So the data to put these users into your database will all sort of happen the first time you run the application up.
Exactly. Now, I am running into a situation where I believe, and I can set this here just to make sure I'm on the right track. But I believe that the campaign that I'm going to be working with, this view model, is going to be already approved. So when I just refresh this, I'll drill in, I get back into here. I've set a breakpoint, and so I'm able to drill in here. And the view model, if there's probably a published, there's published as true. So I'm going to just, for the sake of really quickly, evidencing the defect as reported, I'm just going to change that value to false, and I'll hit F5, and it comes back in here, and there's that publish button. Okay, great. So what I could do, there's a couple of things I could do. I suppose if I go to campaigns, are these all published? I believe they likely are. Now, do we have an unpublish? I don't think we can do that, can we?
Offhand, I don't think we can.
Okay. Well, I might be able to.
There's a feature request if you if you ever need.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I'll go back then. So we would see a button here. So what we can do is this though. So one of the tools that I have installed is SQL Server Management Studio. This is also a free download that you can grab. And let me just drill in here. And I'll have a look at the allReady database. And the table that we were looking at is, I believe, campaign. So if I have a look here, we have a published. So I'm going to use this super handy feature, edit top 200 rows. And this will just let me, because this is seeded data, I can just go in and mark a couple of these false, close that out, and when I refresh the page, we'll see this publish piece show up. So if I go into the campaign and let it flow through, I will see that there now. So now it's super easy to refresh. And what I did is I did number 2. So I will go back and change my path for my debug, and I'll just change that to number 2 so that when I debug, oh gosh, okay, we're gonna close that out like right now. It is a super handy feature if you're doing script debugging. We're not doing that right now. And there's the publish button. So I'm gonna go into script debug. Is that there it is right there. And there should be
just a level further down, I think. There it is, bottom item in that list.
Boom. There we go. And we will just shut down Visual Studio and we'll restart, and it should just pop right back up. Now it's also remembered my credentials and all those things because of the wonderful world of cookies. Okay, so again, we're back here. We've got this button. Looks great, but doesn't really reveal the intent. So we are going to go and tackle the view. So first of all, I'm just going to go and make sure I don't have any. Oh, I got a bunch of changes here. Let's see what's going on. Sure. I can actually discard all of those. So I'll flip back and forth between tools. We can do some of this. discard all changes. Boom, we're clean. What I'm going to do to get started, I've now got this issue assigned to me, and it is 2295. So a pattern that I like to use, and it's kind of self-referential, is I can check out a branch for that. So I'll say fix 2295, and then I like to give a little bit of description so I can remember when I'm looking at my branches what it is that I'm actually working on. So I might do 2295, replace button text. And there I am. So now in Visual Studio, I'm going to simply go and track down that view again that we already identified. So it's under the areas, it's under views, under campaign, and then details. Oh, and
Jeff and John, I believe, came up against this issue. Visual Studio Live Shed does not like tag helpers and does not play very nicely.
Okay.
There's something in there. So it might be worth stopping your live share with me for a moment, which isn't necessarily a problem because it's crashed on my end at the minute as well.
Oh, okay.
So
excellent.
Close that down.
Sure. And
we should point out that this is a very early sort of private preview, so there are bits that the team are still working on.
You know, that's unfortunate because I wanted to demonstrate the live share stuff, and here we are in something with a tag helper, so we kind of hit a bit of a snag. Do you know what? Maybe what we could get you to do just for to kind of have a look at it is I'll get you to add some of the campaign in the campaign controller. We'll add some comments or something, just some trivial changes or whatever, but just kind of demonstrate what's going on. Okay, so in here, I am looking for that. Now there's a button, and I'm going to be able to find it pretty easily, and I already see where it is in the page on line 33. But what I might do if I was looking for this out in the views, I'm just going to hit F12 and then inspect the document, and then I can find something that will allow me to actually hone in on it. So I see, you know, I've got data toggle tooltip, data placement top, which is just kind of some of these cues that are on this. And I've got a class here with a button group. And inside it, I'm probably going to see something like a span with an FA upload. Okay. So I can track that down, and, you know, I might even do something like, because this anchor tag here has a span in here for the FA upload. If this were a bigger view, I might even do something like just hit Control F and do FA upload, and then find that text in the document. And then that kind of helps me hone in on the component that's actually giving us the grief. So I'm just going to nest that a little bit for readability. And the defect actually says to replace that icon with the word publish. So I'm going to make that change. The great thing about this is that when you make changes to the views and then we simply refresh the page out in the browser, you know, that is done. So it looks like we've got some sizing problems now, so I'll probably just want to address that really quickly as well. And that throws us into a button group. So I think because we've got these guys as buttons already, I can actually just extract that guy out and put him at that root level. And what will that do for me? Because we have this published, right? So whether or not I'm published, it'll be okay. And by moving it outside of there and out of that small button group, we're actually corrected already. So there's the publish piece. So didn't really change any functionality. It's just kind of a view change. So it's pretty simple. But what I'm going to do is start this session again. I'll copy that to the clipboard, and I will paste it over quickly to Steve, and then we'll minimize that guy. It's because out on the internet, you know, they've got this thing called trolls. I don't know if you knew that, but I have seen people come in and wreak havoc on things. So hopefully that was quick enough that nobody caught it. I'm gonna start seeing other people.
Yeah, if you get multiple cursors moving around, you know you didn't quite make that.
Yeah. And I want to show you some of the cool things that's happening. So Steve's going to go in and start working on the campaign controller and just kind of adding a note there. Maybe I've asked him for some help and he's pointing some stuff out. As he starts typing around, I'll just maybe give me a cue that you've actually typed something. You're working away there, hey?
Yeah, funnily enough, it's actually now showing me the view that wasn't loading for us a few minutes ago. So that's interesting.
Okay, very cool.
So when I first join, it basically pins me to wherever you are. So because you're currently viewing the details, it's kind of pumped me into there. So I'm just going to navigate to the campaign controller independently, and that's one of the features of the previews of this live share is that you can either choose to follow the host, or so I sort of follow James's cursor around as he works, or I can choose to go off and explore the code myself and do some other stuff. So.
And I have an icon here saying that Steve has joined. When I click on it, it actually takes me to where he's located. And then I get an indicator here in the margin that Steve is actually in this file. So I believe likewise, you should be able to, like if I go jump into maybe say a different controller in here, I'll go into the import controller. That's a bad controller. We won't guide people into that one. Maybe I'll go over here, but Steve should be able to join me by clicking on my icon as well.
Yeah, so if I choose to pin now, it's jumped me over locally to the event controller, which looks like where you are, event admin controller.
Right on. And if you click inside there as well, then I see his cursor appear and he's over in the margin as well. So some pretty cool stuff in here. So I guess the reason why we wanted to kind of point this out is because actually I was using this morning. I was using this coding with a couple of my coworkers who are just a couple of monsters. We were working through some Angular stuff. So we were actually in VS Code and we had the session set up and they had joined and they were coding along with me. And we were actually working in a couple of different files at the same time, which is great because there was an API side of things. There was a view side of things. There's a controller, and we were able to go and work in those different places at the same time. So it actually added a lot of value, and it's actually kind of fun too, to be coding around and working at some of that stuff together. So I'm just going to undo our changes here in this file, close it down. So as far as I can see, I think I've got everything covered off that I need to on this. So what I'm going to do here is just to kind of be a good citizen in the world of the PR, is I'm going to take a snip of the change, just highlighting that I've completed the work. And I'm just going to paste that back into actually, I'll put it. I don't need to put it here. I'm going to put it into my pull request. So what I'm going to do is you can do this a number of different ways. I like going into GitHub Desktop because it's just a really quick indicator. It helps me back things out if I had unintentionally changed config settings or things like that. But it also works really easy to just, from the command line, just do a git status, see that I've got that. I can either add the file that's changed, or I can, if I'm happy, if there's multiple changes, I can just do git add, and then I'm going to add a commit message, updating button text per issue. And then I can git push, and it'll come back and give me a message that I don't have something set up on Origin. So in my case, because of the way that I've forked and then cloned down, I've got Origin, which is my own repo. It's the Mr. James home on GitHub, and I can push up to the repository that I've forked. So I'm just going to do that. So git push set upstream Origin, and then and Posh gets pretty good about helping me. I can just tab complete through the branch that I want to push, and so I can do this git push set upstream Origin, and then it'll automatically create that, push that up for me. And now what I can do, and this is kind of an important step, Steve, why don't you walk me through what I need to do in order to make sure this closes down correctly?
Yeah, so one big tip. So if you jump over to the code tab there, you are there. Got a slight delay, I think, on yours. So when you've pushed code to your fork of the repository, one of the nice things you'll see is, well, I think you've gone the other way now, but you get an automatic helper on the code tab to start a pull request if you want to do it that way.
Right there, yeah.
That's it. And so GitHub's detected you've pushed a branch to your fork, and it's sort of automatically just going to create this shortcut that sets up the first part of the pull request process for you. One of the key things when you do this is in the comments, what you want to be doing is in some way tying this back to the issue. And there's a few kind of keywords you can use. The most common one, and the one I tend to use, is you can type fixes and then a space. And then if you start with a hash, you'll start getting a list of possible issue numbers that you can tie this back to. So as long as you know what issue you were working on, I think it's picked up the 2259 there, which...
It has. And actually, what's really nice about this is I think that GitHub is pretty smart about the issues that you've been in and working on lately. So it actually auto-fills with that list. Okay, so I've got that issue up. So I'll just tab complete that out.
And what this will do is it will link the two together. So it means that when we do eventually close and merge this pull request, it will close out the issue for us as well. So it does a bit of the tidying up and the administration for us behind the scenes. Make sure that we haven't got issues sitting around once they've actually been resolved. So it's always good practice to do that. It's kind of a pretty much a convention working in GitHub. And it also means that from the issue, we'll get a link there as well. So if someone's viewing the issue, they'll actually be able to see that a pull request has been made against that issue.
Okay, so I had taken this screenshot, and I'll just demonstrate something really here. So I'm just going to paste this in. It uploads the image. If I want to see it, I can hit the preview tab. So I have removed the icon and added the text per the issue. So now if I click over to preview, and there it is. So I can see. And what this does is it just kind of says, this reiterates, I understood what the problem was. The picture kind of backs it up saying this is what's actually happened. And then this links it back to the original issue so that whoever is going to go and review this, it automatically does some of the housekeeping work for them on the back end, as Steve was talking about. So I'll just create a pull request.
Yeah, and having that image there is very, very helpful when you're reviewing these things, because sometimes these smaller kind of UI changes, you don't necessarily want to have to pull that code down onto the machine while you're reviewing it just to verify what it looks like. So if you can save us some time by showing us what it looks like, that's always very helpful.
Okay, excellent. So I've got a pull request out there, and I'll let people in on a little secret here. We do have a GitHub, Slack channel that we use for allReady, and we welcome contributors to join this. It is by invitation, so we have to send you a link, but we're super happy to have anybody join. If you've issued a pull request, we will send you a link. Now, you can see here that it actually has added this for me. So we've kind of pumped it in. So any of the contributors to allReady will actually be able to see that somebody's made a pull request, and we'll start reviewing it right away. So if you wouldn't mind, Steve.
Do you want me to share my side of the...
Yeah, I see there's... oh, yeah, it seems to have tracked in the allReady Codeathon PSD. Somehow I must have had it out on my fork, so it's a great reason to reject. I probably just didn't have a clean fork there, but regardless, let's assume that's not there. We'll pretend that's not there.
We can clean it up later.
Absolutely. So I will just stop my screen sharing session, and I'll let Steve take over.
Okay, so let's try. Let me just... Can you see my screen there, James?
Yeah, I'm going to just try and present yours to everyone. There we go.
Okay,
I think that allows everybody to see what you've got going on. So
okay, so let's hop over to here. Let's zoom this in a little bit. So this was the issue, and you'll notice. So because James linked with that hash and linked back to the issue, GitHub's already refreshed this and given me a link back to the pull request. So that's really handy. I can follow that through, and then I can see all of those details. So yeah, it looks like there's a couple of commits managed to find their way in there under you, actually. But anyway, we'll pretend those look normal. And then, so my normal process on a pull request is take a look at what's being changed. We've in this case already looked at the issue. And then I just hop over to files change. Now, depending on how complex the pull request is, how much has changed, whether it's a functional backend change or UI, will determine the flow. But GitHub's got this really nice diff, so already I can kind of take a look at this and assess, okay, well, what has James made changes to in this file? And there's a white space there, so that's why that's been picked up. But I can take a look at this, and I'm reasonably confident looking at that James has not only shown me a picture of what he's done, but the structure of what he's changed here looks correct. If I really wanted to, there is some. Pretty sure, yeah. So you've got some command line instructions that GitHub gives. So I could actually pull this code down and actually interact with this locally if I wanted to test out the feature or run unit tests against the solution. Knowing this is a UI change, I'm not going to do that in this case, but that's what I would tend to do there. So do you want me to just pretend that I don't see that other thing? So I'm going to go in and say, this looks...
Yeah, that's what we'll do. I like it when I check stuff in and you say, I'll pretend I don't see that. That's good stuff.
That's it. Yeah, I didn't see it. So GitHub has this concept of sort of reviewing changes now. So we can go in, we can give a review summary. And I can choose whether I'm going to just make a comment, whether I'm actually going to approve this, or if I've got some changes. So if there was something in here that James had done that perhaps wasn't our normal pattern, or I noticed some other problem. So say James hadn't picked up that the button size was slightly smaller than the rest. I might be able to go in here and say, oh, by the way, it looks like you're picking up a wrong CSS sort of class there that's changing the appearance. So I can make the request for those changes that gets fed back. But in this case, we're happy. So I'm going to close the review on that one. So you can see the review comment list here. We get a green tick saying I'm happy with it, and green tick there. The other thing that's happening in the background that we should point out is we've got continuous integration on this project. So we're using AppVeyor. So what that's doing behind the scenes is AppVeyor has picked up a change on this branch. It's going to build our code. We've got a build script in a solution, and it's going to run that up and run all of our unit tests for us. So that's a really nice feature. If I'd come to this perhaps half an hour after it had been done, this would already have run, and I would have knowledge of whether or not the unit tests have got broken by any of the changes. So that's a kind of instant indicator of whether this thing is going to build properly and run properly. And then the other thing GitHub will do is show us whether there's any merge conflicts. So again, if James had started this off of a branch from master that has since diverged and we've accepted other pull requests into the project, we'd get that identified here, and we'd know that maybe this needs to be rebased on top of those most recent changes. I know the build's not going to fail here, so I'm for the purposes of time, because the AppVeyor build is reasonably slow. I'll have a look at the detail.
We do have 8 hours here. We could go for 8 hours if we need to wait.
About 8 hours we need. We can see the build script. Actually, it's not doing too bad. It's
it might actually be very close to completing.
Yeah, it's coming through there, isn't it? But we're pretty confident this is not gonna break anything. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to choose to merge the pull request, and click OK, confirm on that. We can see now that that's been merged into HTBox master. And if we go back to the issue, so we've got that link there that's automatically added, we should see that this issue has now been closed out for us. So that's what that linking process does. And that ensures that no one else is going to come across this issue and potentially try and start working on it once that's already been sorted out.
Awesome.
That's it, yeah.
Okay, that's great. I think there's some low-hanging fruit like that in the tree, and I think that if anybody out there is interested in getting connected, plugged into open source, we're a pretty friendly project to get started on, and it's for a really good cause. It's for a lot of really good causes, actually. Being that any organization on the planet can use this, and so we do hope that you're interested in getting involved. Find us at HTBox. On what is it called? GitHub. You can find us on GitHub at HTBox, and we're on at HTBox on Twitter. We have a couple of Facebook pages as well. So jump in and feel free to pick up some code, and away we go. Steve, thanks for taking some time out of your day from across the pond. I do want to point out one of the really cool things about this project has been getting to meet people and work with people from around the globe. So Steve and I have never met in person, and yet he's still not afraid to make fun of the way I dress. So we you do get to know people from around the globe, and I'm hailing from Canada, and Steve is out in you're in France, right?
Yeah, that's the accent.
I knew I was picking it up. You are outside of what's the name of your town?
Brighton is the sort of nearest
Brighton.
big town that people may recognize.
Right, that would no, right, Brighton. I was going to say Glasgow, but that's not the right. That's the wrong end. So yeah, okay, very good. So yeah, join in. Find us on GitHub, Twitter, Facebook, whatever you want. Start interacting with us, and we are going to be more than happy to get you folks involved. Thanks again for your time, Steve.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll talk to y'all soon. We actually have, I should throw out there too, we have a weekly community stand-up that we do on Tuesdays. We're going to have another one next week. After that is the MVP Summit, so we're not going to be online, but feel free to join in. We've got them on our YouTube channel. If you found us here, you should be able to find our channel down below. I think it's maybe you have to go down there. And then you should be able to drill in and see our upcoming events. And we'll have that mapped out for March after we get back from MVP Summit. And you can view some of our past conversations and how to get involved in those kinds of things. Also, some great resources there in the notes for the show. So be sure to check that out. Thanks, everyone. And we will catch you hopefully at the next allReady community stand-up. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Cheers.